The recording, yeah, the recording is on. So I've been taking a look at the Honkai Star Rail subreddit. Now that I'm done with the actual story, uh, we have made. Sorry, I got a bit distracted. I'm done with the story. I've played through the entirety of 3.0. I know how it starts, how it ends. I know all of it, and I have some opinions about the game myself. And besides my own opinions, I've also seen various other opinions online, right? And I thought this would be a good opportunity to basically just put my thoughts out there. And at the same time, look at what other people are saying, because, that's how, uh, because I thought it would be fun, is all. So, let me see. So, the main, basically, complaint that I've seen here is it relates to the gameplay, right? So I will show you the Reddit screen, but that would be too much effort. So I'll just tell you what the criticism is, and the criticism is mainly the game is boring. Okay. To that criticism, I'll expound on that a bit in just a second, but before I even go there, I just want to say that's factually incorrect, right? So their main criticism is it's a 10-hour story patch. Most of it is done yapping. There's a lot of yapping. Now, I think I'll come back to that. Okay, so the complaints are basically there's a lot of yapping, there's a lot of tedious puzzles that you have to go through, um, and the animations and the presentation are sorely lacking. So these are the three main points, and I agree to them to a certain extent, but I also disagree with some of them to a much larger extent. So the first thing is the yapping. This story patch has been an incredible improvement over Penacony. This is this is straight up facts. I completely disagree if you think otherwise. Now, there were definitely some segments in the game that were kind of like the low points for the game, where there was definitely a lot more gap, and it just wasn't very good. And the two instances that I can think of where this is reflected very clearly is number one, the fountain scene, the infamous fountain scene that we all are very acutely aware of at this point in time. Um, that was that was um, that was bad. There was no need for any of that in the game. Um, I wish they could have found a better way to basically just do that exposition dump. That was purely an exposition dump. It wasn't good. There needs to be something more if you really want to do something like that, right? Having some visuals on the screen would definitely help, right? You can do similar to the new like this is I'm not sure if it's the battle pass, but in Genshin, remember, whenever a new season of battle pass starts, they throw on an animation, right? And they do that kind of an animation in many different parts of the story. Like I think the Gobu Goba, the little Shangling's little pet. There was an entire story that I remember in Genshin Impact regarding that little mascot, and that kind of story was also said and done using some sort of animation, right? What they should have done, instead of getting two different voice actors to narrate the same story while our main protagonists are basically staring at a fountain, is you could have thrown together an animation, which I personally don't think would have taken that long. I've done a little bit of animations here and there. I've used After Effects. You can literally just make that entire thing in After Effects, right? Of course, art is going to be something that takes time, but I think with the amount of resources that they have, I strongly believe that instead of doing the Hurt animated trailer, they could have maybe done that, that would have added more than a fucking animated trailer. Which, by the way, that animated trailer for Herta, it's nice, it's good, but it didn't need to be done, right? I don't understand why they drop the ball so much on what's actually needed versus what is, not that important, right? They are very good at drumming up hype and getting you super interested, but when it actually comes to time for them to deliver on their presentation, they drop the ball so bad a lot of the time. And this is one of those instances. They could have done something like that. That, in my opinion, is one of the biggest lows in the story. And the second thing, which is a huge low in the story, would be the entire sequence with the Herta at the end of the patch. Um, there was absolutely no reason for them to cook up all of that garbage with the simulated universe, like dice polls or whatever the fuck those things were, and just have the Herta go through the motions of doing some things which eventually are just boiled down to just fighting some garbage mobs for a little bit. And reusing assets out the wazoo. This is 3.0 and you're still sending me back to the Herta space station and to fucking Bellabog. This has to be the biggest disrespect in all of gacha history. I swear to God, you made me go back to fucking Bellabog in 3.0, the annual patch 3.0, and you reused assets from the fucking Herta space station. I'm not talking about the scene where Sunday and Mr. Yang confront Herta. That has to be in the Herta space station because that makes sense, right? I'm talking about the audience system, those 3 fucking stages. They still used the assets from the old levels. That has to be a joke. That has to be a slap in the face for everybody who has been playing this game since day one. I will say this, that was disgusting. Apart from those 2 things, which are egregious by the way, I don't think the rest of the story was that bad. Most of the story was good, in my opinion. So, the entire yapping thing, I don't get it. Apart from those 2 instances, when there was senseless yapping, the rest of the story, the rest of the voice acting was incredibly good. The voice acting for the yapping in the Herta scene was also fine, right? I take serious offense with the yapping at the fountain scene because the first narration, with the male, like the deep voice, the guy speaks so slowly, right? By the time it takes more time for you to register what the fuck he's saying. And by the time you realize what he said a moment ago, he's already stuck like mid-sentence, or he's like in the middle of a different sentence, and it's just, that's not how you speak, bro. If you speak in slow motion, right? If you speak in slow motion, it's gonna be so difficult for people to catch up, and they do this a lot pre 3.0. That was the only place where I found, that kind of, slow speaking. There was a lot of that in 2.6 even. It was bad, right? 2.6, a lot of slow speaking. Mr. Kucha, I think that was his name. Master Kucha, not Mr. Kucha. Master Kucha would literally speak in slow motion, dude. Like pick up the pace, my guy. Today, Junior. But yeah, the fountain scene was incredibly painful. I hope there isn't much of that in the future. So that's what I think with the yapping. The second thing is with the gameplay. I think the gameplay is fine. I don't think what these complaints are about the gameplay. It was pretty good. I think they mixed up a lot of different variety as much as they can. I mean, this is Honkai Star Rail after all. You had to go from point A to point B, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's a very common theme in most games, going from point A to point B. You go from point A to point B even in Zenless, right? You can go from point A to point B, that is fine, and it's just as much of a chore in Honkai than as much as it is in Zenless. In fact, I would argue that it's worse in Zenless. And I'm not a Zenless hater, but I find Zenless content to be tedious too. I don't understand why people don't voice their complaints so much for Zenless, but it's bad. Like, you are literally going from point A to point B, fighting mobs, right? The combat is great in Zenless, don't get me wrong, but when you are using the same 3 characters all the time and you're just fighting them, it becomes stale, it becomes boring. I don't get why people and it takes a lot more time to do Zenless stuff anyway. Um, but apparently people are very happy with Zenless. I don't understand. As someone who has been playing Zenless all the way up until their 2.0, was it just now, the major patch? I didn't do that. But I've done everything pre 2.0. Maybe they switched things up in 2.0, and that's why people are a lot more happy with Zenless. I wouldn't know, but you know, this is basically what I think. So going from point A to point B, I don't think it's that big of a problem, especially when the maps are new and you're getting to see and explore something new and cool through the story. I think that's really cool, right? I don't want the story to just be cutscene after cutscene. I want there to be some gameplay elements mixed in, and they did a pretty good job of doing that with Emphorius, in my opinion. There were puzzles in the middle. I don't get why people have problems with puzzles. They were not a low point personally. I really enjoy taking a break from the story to do puzzles and just exploring the map, because that gives it a little bit more, I don't know, like I said, variety. It gives you something to do. So I don't understand why people have a problem with that. Could they have done something better? Probably. But is this bad? No, it's much better than Penacony. In Penacony, you literally moved from point A to point B and had just cutscenes play back to back. And when I say cutscenes, I don't mean pre-rendered cutscenes. I just mean people, characters in games standing and just yapping to each other. That's what they had in Penacony. So Amphorius is a definite improvement. I just genuinely don't think otherwise. The third complaint is static shots and basically the lack of dynamic animations, and that's a valid complaint. I totally 100% agree with that aspect. Their presentation is sorely lacking. The use of the black screens, text on white, white text on black screens is egregious. It's bad. I don't want to see any more black scenes ever. And the entire oh wait, Castris is over here, so she hangs out here. That's cool. The entire fucking, what you may call it, whenever Tribi used to transport people across like different maps, they always throw up a white text on black background. It's bad. It sucks. I don't like it. It makes it more confusing because in the third map, I don't remember what the map is called. Let's see if I can go there. Maybe it's definitely not Krymnos. It's this map for sure. So what's more confusing is, I think I may be wrong about this, but let's just assume that I'm right, and I'll double check on this. But I think this gate that you see up front, this is supposed to be the Century Gate, right? And Tribi is someone who has inherited the core flame of Yenis or Janus. Not sure what the correct pronunciation is, but Yenis, which lets them use these Century Gates to move across maps. So what happens essentially? The gate is right over here. So what do you mean Tribi is using the gates to move across maps? Is she spawning that entire gate every single time and we're taking a step forward? And then if that's the case, why didn't we do this at first when we first arrived at Akama? Why did we use the Dromus? There's so many things that they just leave to your imagination that it's kind of shitty. They don't explain that. You could argue that it's because they had to transport a lot of people and it wouldn't be possible for them to carry that many people through the gates because probably, it takes a huge toll on them. But you could have explained that, right? You could have explained that, but you left it to our imagination yet again. So, yeah, there is a definite problem with the storytelling in Honkai Star Rail. The story is always good, but the execution is always lacking. This video has gone on for 15 minutes, so I'm gonna take a break right here. But let's hope for the best. I don't think they're gonna be taking any of the feedback from this patch on board and fix the next patch, because that's not how software development works. And I imagine that goes even harder for game development, because they probably already QA'd and tested and implemented bugs and fixes and everything for the next patch, and they're just working on finishing touches at this point. So they probably will not go back and rehaul the entire system just in the next patch. Uh, and it's disappointing to see that they haven't done it for the 3.0 patch. I was really expecting them to do this for 3.0. 3.0 was the major update, the annual update for the game, and they didn't do it in 3.0. It's really hard to imagine that they're gonna do it in the non in the some in one of the other patches in 3.6. It's unlikely. It's not gonna happen. But I'm gonna keep an open mind, and we'll see. It's not gonna happen in the next patch for sure, but maybe 3 or 4 patches down the line, when they have enough time, maybe they could spend some resources to overhaul the way they do their story presentation. This is really bad that they haven't done it for 3.0. They should have done it. They should have had everything in place for the 3.0 patch. Instead of spending time on maps and animation and like puzzles and stuff, which is very good, don't get me wrong, but I feel like this does not justify 6-7 months and the constant dry patches in pre 3.0, like 2. After the war dance, every other patch has been crap. It has been the most laziest shit of all time. You're telling me in all this time after 2.3 you couldn't fucking, like, when was war dance? War dance was 2.4. After 2.4 you couldn't spend 2.5, 2.6, 2.7, and you probably already had people working on M40s right after 2.0. It's surreal that this has come to this. But let's see. Let's hope for the best.